Good morning, everybody. So good to see you. And today we have Martha Creek. I'm so delighted to have her with us. She's been here before. Some of you remember her and others are newbies to Martha. You're in for a treat. This is one of the most amazing women I've ever known. She is delightful. She's funny. She's down to earth and so loving. And she's been such a help to so many in the unity movement as she travels, did travel 90% of her time around the country, healing conflicts in churches and within human beings. So we ministers have benefited by her as much as the rest of you. So I just love this woman. I adore her, and you are in for a treat today. So Martha, take it away.
Thank you very much. All blessings to you. And thank you, Reverend Sheila, for those words and for your own reflection and your gratitude for it. And I'm called to serve those who serve. So I believe if you're hearing this live or in the future at any time, that you too are aware of a calling that you have to be and express here on the earth things that are extraordinary, things that are radical, things that are in higher consciousness. So it's no little thing that somebody, some of us, even a small group of committed people have made all the change that's ever been made in the whole world. So if you're here today listening to this and participating in any way, you also have been equipped and called, I believe, to be an extraordinary leader in extraordinary times and in extraordinary ways, particularly when it doesn't make sense to, particularly when we're afraid or triggered or concerned or worried or fed up or put out or exhausted. My favorite part of being a human being and of human beings is our ability to innovate, to say, okay, there is loss, there is grief, there is trouble on the border here, there is trouble here, and what can we do from here? What will we do? What can I do? How can I be a contributor to what I want to see and be and express? What is it I can do? So I tease in Unity churches and many New Thought churches, and today I heard it in another environment, in a more ecumenical setting, the song that's old and as some of us, older than a few of us, called "Let There Be Peace on Earth." Now we sing it and say it and pray it even, but if we don't get into the crevices of our mind to see what's really running the show, instead of saying, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. That's the lyrics, one of the lyrics. Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. And this triggered, animalistic, less mature, less differentiated mind of ours will say, well, I'm not going to make peace till she apologizes, until he shows he's got remorse or regret, or until he's arrested, or until he's shown penance. So we're stuck then in this bog down of this regressive mind that says then there won't be any. If I'm waiting for something to change, if I'm waiting for someone to do what I'm not willing to do, then I'm bound in the old painful way. So we're singing and saying, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. And we're really believing, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with her. And let it begin with him. And let it begin with my siblings who won't speak to me. Or let it begin with the neighbor who can't control their dog. So it won't move. It won't evolve. It won't expand. This higher consciousness, this world that works for all, until we finish off whatever's ours to do. And you may have done 99% of your spiritual work. You may say, Martha, I live at peace. You know, my mama would say, oh, if I was any better, I'd have to put a rock in my shoe. If I was any better, I'd be twins. Well, the 1% where we're not finished, where we still get tripped up, or where we lay awake at night and wonder, or where we get angered, irritated, frustrated, upset, blaming, pitiful, powerless, chip on our shoulder, sensitive, slow to recover, covert, passive, aggressive, whatever that percentage is, even if it's small, is where 100% of our pain is. So if 99% of your spiritual work is done, good for you. You may ascend this afternoon. Be sure to film it, because then all the money woes will be over for the world. And then instead if there is a soul's progression, if there is work to be done here, then whatever little part that may be left, the 1%, the 10% that's left, is necessary then for me to get in there to see, what am I actually believing about that? What is it I've still not accepted? Which doesn't mean I won't take action, which doesn't mean I won't vote. It doesn't mean I won't call a police person. It doesn't mean I won't do whatever I've got to do if they can't control themselves. But until I accept that that's part of the human spectrum, until I accept that that goes with the lay of the land of human beings being human beings and human beings unfolding in their evolution, that I'm powerless to bring anything to it, to be any part of the solution, to be a contributor of that. So get a sense today of what it would be like if you committed and recommitted in this new year. I mean, I heard last week you got a new word, right, on your white stone. Some of you. Just pause for a minute and reflect on what word that was. And how I'm going to apply it in situation after situation and after situation. So it doesn't go on the altar. Then I refer to it when I dust. But it goes on the altar, but it stays in the altar of my mind. It stays in the altar of my heart that says, now, wait a minute. In this situation that's getting a little boogery here, who would I be if I present as that word? Calmer, resilient, in the flow, resourceful, visionary, harmonious, harmony, gratitude, joy. So, whoa, you mean even when there's loss and grief, I've got to be in gratitude? It's like, no, you don't have to be. And you will continue to suffer until you do. That says, I have grief, of course. There's loss. I also have, even in the grief, I'm going to have gratitude also. Gratitude for what I had, gratitude for the love they were, gratitude for the support I got from them, gratitude for what I learned. You know, I even say in my family, I had trouble saying, I'm having a little trouble saying I'm grateful for them. And then I had to start with, well, they either taught me how to do it or they taught me how not to do it. Their way was not my way. However, I don't have to judge their way. And that's the mastery. That's the mastery of living in a higher consciousness, is to see how can I stay in what's right for me and not make someone else wrong. How can I be right and live from rightness, live righteously without displacing that and falsely expecting someone else to think like I do or behave like I do or to live like I do. And then it says, well, there's ever how many million of us are here. We are in a full spectrum of that humanness. And if anybody ever thinks like I do, it'll be for a minute. And then they'll be right back to thinking the way they think. And if they ever do something the way I do it, it'll be a nature unfolding. But if I get dependent on them doing it the way I do it, then I won't ever, ever be able to be liberated, to be free to live in relation to life on life's terms and not dependent on getting my way. And I've studied and followed Abraham Lincoln for several years as a leader, as a differentiated leader. How he didn't surround himself with people that would nod and agree with him, that would question him, even challenge him, because it kept him thinking, it kept him innovating, it kept him resourcing, learning, and from a place of a differentiated leader. He was also a leader that knew a level of grief that many wouldn't know, not just his parents, but children, dead children, to one child with a disease, and a wife, according to history, that vacillated from being a muse to being MUSE, being a muse to being in a psych ward. And the extremes of that. So as I think about, some of you are still really, really affected by what happened this week. And so is the human spectrum, about what happened to it. So I look to see how I would relate to this leader, what a leader like this might say. So there's two that came up, two today. Then one was Abraham Lincoln said, and this was during a civil war. Not an illusion of a civil war, not an imagined civil war, but during a civil war. And he said, whether these soldiers were wearing blue or gray, regardless of what color they wore, the grief, if it was the grief of all that loss, was equally distributed to the whole human spectrum, we wouldn't have one cheerful face on the whole earth. That's the depth of it. And even while his son was dying and dear friends in battle, and without ever using the word hope, he spoke thoughtfully and sensitively in a condolence letter that's on in the records in the archives of what he wrote to a daughter of one of his friends. And this is what he said in the letter. In this sad time of our world, sorrow comes to all, and it's often with bitter agony. Perfect relief is not possible except with time. Perfect relief is not possible except with time. You cannot now believe that you'll ever feel better. And that's the state of some of the people now in our nation right now. They don't believe they'll ever feel better. And he says, but this is not true. This is not true. Even with the sorrow, the loss, the grief, the fear, the panic, the worry, it is not true that we will not get relief, that we will not feel better. We are sure to be relieved. We're sure to know happiness again. We're sure to know a calmer time again. And knowing this in certainty and truly believing it will make you less anxious now. It'll make you less upset now, less miserable now, less suffering now, to refer to take 2 steps back and say, let me get a broader perspective here. Since the beginning of time, since the beginning of creation, times of intensity, times of loss, grief, change, threats, willfulness, war have been part of it. And even in that, human beings resourced, innovated, found a way to make it better, to improve, to love one another, to support one another, to find a minute of happiness, one little speck of happiness in their life, to be less miserable. And the last part of this that he's closed, and I don't even know if it was a closing of the letter or not, this was an excerpt from it, but he says, and I am speaking to you from experience. This is not a theory. I've lived long enough. I have enough experience to make this statement that you will be calmer again. You will be happier again. You will get relief from this again. And knowing that and referring to that and believing that is going to help you now. It's going to make you less miserable now. So I believe if Abraham Lincoln could say this in the middle of this war, even shortly after the death of his own child, his dear friends, then surely there is hope for the rest of us. And all of you have lived through deep loss, deep change. And you do not have to carry the pain of that grief to your grave. And others may have to carry it to their grave. But there's some of us that don't and won't. And we don't have to keep living like we've got to carry that pain alone. So there's some parts of it we'll have to do alone. There's inner work. There's work in our own consciousness, for our own soul's progression. There's also the work to get out of ourselves. It's one of my teachers and friends, Lynn McTaggart, says it as get over yourself, to get off of yourself and quit focusing on yourself and see, what could I do about a situation? What could I do to contribute here? What could I do to live a universal Christedness? What would I be and what would I be like if I brought forth the consciousness of a Christ consciousness in this very interaction? In this very moment, in this interchange with somebody, in this interaction with somebody. And what would it be like if before I fire off an email, I'm going to align with a Christ consciousness before I respond? And before I fly off with my social media post, I've got to put a pause in there to say, I'm going to purposefully align into a Christ consciousness. And then to remember and to stay awake to that every prayer matters. Praying matters. The way I pray, how I pray, what I say, the power of the word matters. So every single thing I'm doing is contributing to more anxiety, more stress, like throwing fuel on a fire, or I'm contributing with clearer thinking, calmer mind, spacious heart. So which is it going to be? And oh, the allure to be mad. Oh, the temptation of the mind to be affronted again, to be offended. And even though we say we don't like drama, it ain't so. It is not so, because we're still getting high off of that. The mind expresses the same chemicals when we get affronted and offended as narcotics. So being affronted and offended is our own narcotic until we see, wait a minute, I can circuit break that at times. I can put a pause in there and consciously choose. So I'm less likely to end up in my own group hurting mentality. I'm less likely to be brainwashed into a place I don't want to be, or to join something that's not true for me. So if there's free will, and that's another topic and another workshop maybe, if there's free will, then what will am I extending? If there's free will, then what choice will I make in this interaction? What choice will I make in this situation that I'm in? And knowing that I'm causative, I'm generating something, I'm causative, I'm a creator, I'm a co-creator with life, then whatever I'm going to do is going to be causative. This is good news. So then, what shall you cause? What will you be the cause of? And what cause will you say at the end of your life, on your deathbed, as you reflect, glad I did. Glad I did. Because we're either going to be glad I did or wish I had. And today, we get to decide about that. And some of you probably heard it before. If you followed along with me, it's like, okay, if we're at the end of our life and there's our gravestone, and in here it says it, here lies Martha Creek. She was drama, drama, drama. Here lies Martha Creek. She was mad most of the time. Here lies Martha Creek. She had issues. Here lies Martha Creek. She wouldn't forgive anybody. Or here lies Martha Creek. She found something better than being mad. Here lies Martha Creek. She had ideas. Here lies Martha Creek. Instead of the drama, 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 she had dreams and went toward them. She had dreams for a different way to be and went toward the dream. So what would your headstone say? And more gospel this morning. You're writing it. You're writing what's going to go on your headstone. You get to decide. And it starts again today. So regardless of what we've done, regardless of how much work we've done, regardless of how much of our spiritual work is done, whatever's left of us is how we can continue to make a life something we look back on and go, yay, proud of that. I worked for that. I was conscious in that. I had to make some tougher, bigger choices here and there. And really, really, really glad I did. So think about this morning as we integrate something you've heard. If you could give your heart a space to just feel whatever it's feeling, to feel whatever it's feeling, if whatever it is about your life, your health, your being, your family, your aging, your losses, your grief, and then what if we could give some space to the human spectrum for them to feel too. And let's have a little meditation. A big deep breath. And a deep, deep sense of who you are. And I invite you to speak these words silently or aloud. I know who I am. I know what I am. And I know how I serve. God is. I am. I think that way. God is, I am. I think that way. I pray that way. I create that way. I cause that way. God is, I am. I think like that. I pray like that. I create like that. Another big deep breath. And imagine yourself free. Unaffected by images, unaffected by illusion, unaffected by an imagined future, aligned, at one with, and atoned by the living, loving spirit of what created you. Immune from all else. And get a sense of an expanding compassion through your heart, through the energy of your heart, a compassion that includes you, that includes you. And then a compassion that goes out for all people. Be still. Be still and know God. So we give thanks. We give thanks that we're equipped, that we're called and equipped, that we fall apart and we come back together. And we fall apart and we come back together. And we fall apart and we come back together. And we know that crisis precedes evolution. Crisis precedes creation. So that in this crisis, it is not in vain. And through any crisis that we have in our life, in our emotions, in our world, our physical world, that there is something greater being birthed here. So we step back today, clear about who we are. I know who I am. I know what I am. I know how I serve. Clear about our own powers, our innate powers, our inherent power. And we dedicate this time and this teaching, this awakening, this remembering today for our own soul's progression and for that of the soul's progression of humanity. That there is gratitude for awakening in humanity this very now, this very moment. And we begin again. We begin again. And so it is. Amen.
MarthaCreek.com if I can support you. Blessings.